Trying now? Yeah, there we go. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Planning Commission meeting. First item on our agenda tonight will be a call to order, and I'd like the record to reflect that all 5 commissioners are in attendance. Would you please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is the oral communications. This is for speakers of the public to address the commission on items that are not part of the agenda tonight. Do we have any speaker slips?
We do. We have one, and that's Lisa Provenzano.
Now? Okay. Good evening, commissioners. I wanted to speak about future approval of developments. When approving developments, daily round trips are considered. When looking at daily round trips, they should be added to previously approved sites, round trips of existing homes, and event venues, because that is a real number. How can you approve projects with inadequate amounts of parking spaces in each development, especially when there's no parking? These are the ones on Quail Gardens Drive, on Encinitas Boulevard, Quail Gardens Drive, and Leucadia Boulevard. As with what happened at Fox Point, which is the same developer as Sunshine Gardens, El Camino Real, 87-unit development, and Piraeus, now Piraeus, has a lot for Fox Point. It has approximately 85 parking spaces, 4 no parking or employee spaces, 6 EV only, 3 handicapped EV only, 4 handicapped, 5 20-minute and parking, and 63 regular parking spaces. It's obviously not enough because you can always see a line of cars going up Paseo de las Flores. They say we do have we do have limited parking available. However, we strongly encourage attendees to consider alternative transportation options such as ride-sharing, carpooling, biking, or walking if possible. With Fox Point, was it a concession, and will it be in the future, or waiver, that the low-income housing is not built yet? The schedule for that, they anticipate a staggered occupancy schedule beginning with approximately 7 units available in January, 2 in February, 4 in March, 1 in April, 4 in May, 2 in June, 2 in August, 3 in September, 3 in November, and 3 in March 2026, and the last 4 in October 2026. I don't know if that's part of the rule for the concession. Maybe it's okay, but hard to understand. And with the lower income housing of the market rate homes that are being built, Allison Blackwell said that it would be monitored in case someone's income goes up. But really, is someone going to monitor them closely? And to evict a tenant in California is really hard. Also, the waiting list for the Section 8 waivers is really long. In Encinitas, according to one source, it can be several years, up to 10 years. You can have priority if you have special circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, our next item is changes to the agenda. Are there any changes proposed by the commissioners? I'm going to make a motion that we move item 8B to the consent calendar.
I'd second. I'd like to hear from AP and not move it, but if we can take you seconds to vote, we'll take a vote.
Bob, if it's important to you to hear it, I'm not interested in trying to ram it into the consent calendar, but.
No, I just had a couple questions. There's
Okay,
nothing.
then I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
Then I'd take a motion to approve the consent calendar as it is.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. If I could call the vote?
Oh, where's the vote? Oh, there you go.
Okay, the consent calendar passes. We're on to yes, if you have an item on the consent calendar, there's going to be no further discussion about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to item 8A from our regular agenda items. 8A is the San Elijo Residences, case number multi-0066424. Do we have any commissioner disclosures regarding this project?
I've been by the location.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. I will disclose that the landscape architect on this project is a landscape architect I've worked with and I currently work with on other projects in other jurisdictions. I don't have any financial interest with him, and it doesn't impact my ability to make a decision on this case.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll ask the staff, Christina Bustamante, to give us a staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners, members of the public. My name is Christina Bustamante. I am a senior planner with the team, and I will be presenting this project today. So I'm going to change the screen here so you can see my presentation. Alrighty, and let us begin. So the property is located east of the First Public Road and accessed from San Elijo Avenue. The project is located within the R11 zone, coastal zone, and special study overlay zone. The project is a request for a design review permit and coastal development permit to authorize the construction of 2 single-family dwellings and 2 accessory dwelling units on a vacant lot. And the image you see before you, the vacant lot is highlighted in red, kind of in the lower center of the screen. The net lot area of the parcel is 9,475 square feet, and the allowable density is 2.33 units. The project has demonstrated compliance with the municipal code development standards in that there are 2 dwelling units on the property, and the California State Code allows for 2 accessory dwelling units in addition to the 2 dwelling units allowed by the municipal code. The single-family dwellings are labeled on the plans as House 1 and House 2, and that's the image that you see on the screen there. That's the floor plan, so you can follow along. House 1 is 2,456 square feet. It's a single-family dwelling with 2 bedrooms and an attached garage. House 2 is 2,148 square feet. It's a single-family dwelling with 2 bedrooms and an attached garage and an attached carport that is intended to be used by the accessory dwelling units. The accessory dwelling units are labeled on the plans as ADU 1 and ADU 2. ADU 1 is 515 square feet with 1 bedroom. ADU 2 is 504 square feet with 1 bedroom. The project has demonstrated consistency with required setbacks and that the front yard is required to be at least 20 feet, and the proposed front yard setback is 24 feet and 5 inches. And the side yard setback of the house is 1 and, let me revise here. The side yard setbacks of House 1 and House 2 are required to be 5 feet and have provided 5 feet 1 1/2 inches to the north side, 17 feet and 2 3/4 inches on the south side. The setbacks of the accessory dwelling units are in compliance with the California state codes in that they are allowed to be a minimum of 4 feet away from the side and rear property lines, and it demonstrated that they are 4 feet and 1 1/2 inches away from either the rear or side property lines. The Encinitas Municipal Code requires the parking to be provided at 2 spaces per single-family dwelling. The project will provide 2 parking spaces within an enclosed garage for each single-family dwelling. Per Encinitas Municipal Code, at least 1 parking space shall be required for each accessory dwelling unit unless it has a qualifying instance, such as located within 1/2 mile of public transit. In this case, the project is located within 1/2 mile of public transit, is not required to provide parking for the accessory dwelling units. However, the project is providing one off-street parking space for each accessory dwelling unit within the carport. The proposed project is subject to the Encinitas design standards and guidelines. The project is consistent with the objective design standards. The landscape standards are met by providing a variety of plant materials, including the use of native plants, and consistency with the landscape design matrix. The architecture design standards are met by providing building articulation with variation in the materials and colors, and at least 3 of the 4 building facades incorporate windows. I would argue with this one, it's probably even more than that. Moving on, the height of House 1 is 21 feet and 7 inches, which meets the development standards, which is 22 feet for flat roof elements. And then here you can see House 1, the north elevation, and House 1 east elevation. House 2 is demonstrating compliance with the standard height in that it is 21 feet and 10 inches. The property has a greater than 10% slope. Therefore, a reduced height limit applies on the east side of the site, which is 12 feet for flat roof measurements as measured from the top of the slope. The accessory dwelling units are in compliance with this standard. And here, this particular screen, I am showing the ADU north elevation on this side and ADU south elevation. And so you'll see the other 2 sides of that ADU, but I wanted to point that out. And then this particular slide here is showing you the other sides of the ADU, which is the east elevation and west elevation on the east side of House 2. And maybe just to go back for just a second here, the slide here where it says House 2 on the top of the screen, and then it's showing a PL here that's maybe to the right of your screen. That's where that 12-foot line is going to be projected out towards San Julio Avenue, and that goes straight out. It doesn't curve with the land, it just goes straight out. So with that, we're able to show with the illustration here that this accessory dwelling unit is in compliance with that, as well as the rest of the project. So I wanted to spend some time on that because I know there's 2 different height measurements that are being used to qualify this project. Okay. So moving on, the applicant held a citizen participation program meeting at the Carnation Room at City Hall in accordance with the municipal code on October 3rd, 2023. There were 8 participants that attended that meeting. Concerns expressed included density, bulk and massing, fire-related concerns, trash management, landscape, and construction management. The applicant addressed the concerns to the extent possible in compliance with the municipal code. Notice of this public hearing was mailed on November 21st, 2024 to all property owners and occupants within 500 feet of the project site and to anyone who requested such notice in writing in compliance with the government code. Additionally, as a courtesy, the notice was posted at City Hall and the Development Services Department internet site under public notices. The proposed project with conditions incorporated is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, the local coastal plan, and demonstrates compliance with the applicable sections of the Encinitas Municipal Code and City of Encinitas design standards and guidelines. The findings can be made to support the approval of the design review permit and coastal development permit. No evidence has been identified to demonstrate that the granting of these permits would have an adverse impact to health, safety, or significant adverse impact to the physical environment. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project based upon the findings and conditions contained in the attached proposed resolution of approval. The applicant team and I are available to answer any questions that you may have. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the staff for clarification?
A couple. Thank you very much. Let's see. So the first question I had is on page 4 of the staff report. Let me just get back up to it. Excuse me. Page 4 of the staff report, it talks about, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to your calculation, or how the calculation was measured for, it says lot coverage was 40% maximum, 32.9%. But when you add up the units, the square footage, it's not quite 32. So, meaning the house one, house two, plus the ADUs are about 1,000 square feet. To get to the 32.9, are you subtracting 800 square feet from the calculation because ADUs, 800 square feet are exempt from the calculation?
For that question, I'm going to defer to Anna, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what is occurring. The state law allows for many reliefs to at least allow for 800 square feet. So that is part of the deductions of the FAR and lot coverage that is available to applicants.
And that's available to any, so all
Correct.
ADUs have that 800 square foot
Correct.
measurement. And then, thank you. The next question is, you touched on it quite a bit. There's quite a few things in the code, and maybe the chair can help, about height measurements from different directions, different locations to different measurements. So I saw the chimneys were kind of high. I saw that there was common areas on the roof that had unusual geometric layouts. They were kind of notched and things like that. And you touched on it in your presentation. Would you mind going back and just kind of clarifying some of the height, and they're measured from different places? So I guess maybe, are the houses measured different than the ADUs? Because you specifically broke that out. So help me as a lay understand all the different height requirements.
Sure. So height here at the City of Encinitas is a bit of a puzzle, and so happy to provide some information on that to help clarify how height is measured here. So standard for regular lots, this particular lot is an R11 property. It would be subject to 22 feet for flat roof elements, 26 feet for roofs that have a pitch.
Okay.
So there's those pieces. Because this particular property is also a steep slope property, it also has another layer of height that we consider, and that's where I was breaking out that east side there, where it would have a 12-foot height as measured from that height, or that particular elevation on the east side. And so if you were to draw a straight line up 12 feet and then straight out towards San Elijo, that would be that 12 feet, right? So then with that, those are the heights, right? Those are suspended up in the air. But then they kind of follow the contour of the grade. So it's very dynamic in the way that we measure height here at the city. And the grade point that we're taking is either the existing or the proposed grade, whichever of those two is lower. And so as the property goes along in its contours, the development would then be subject to that as it changes. Does that kind of help?
It does. So I remember you, in your presentation, you did show from the back the 22 feet out to the street, and you highlighted that in the presentation. So then the next one was, to your point about the contour. So where on the drawings that you state that the second one, based on the contour of the property, can you show that on the plans, just so I can have a reference point? That's all.
Sure, yeah. So let's see, let me find a point that would be good to look at. So this one actually is kind of a fun one. So we'll look at this front elevation. This is the elevation that will look at the street. There's a couple of things going on here. So the elevation here, and let me see if I can zoom in for you because this feels small. Okay, so here we are, west elevation. Again, this is the face that's going to face the street. This here is measuring from the lowest point, and right now it's measuring here at this 105 point, right? And then it comes up to here and it's measuring at 21.8, and that's to the top of this roof. And you may think, okay, well, wait a minute, I see this structure up here that kind of looks like some kind of trellising or some kind of fencing or something like that, right? Okay, so then let's go to the floor plan of this because that helps illuminate. Ooh, look at that. I didn't know I could do that.
And Christina,
Okay.
I think that same image showed from the side, if you look at the top, it actually shows clearly how it's set back.
Okay, let's go
Yeah.
back.
I think it's a good one there.
Yeah, so the side here, I think what Anna is explaining is this same slide. This here on the left is the west elevation, the front of the house, right? Here's the balcony. Here's that roof piece. And then here is that trellising, and it's stepped back and away. And so our height for that is measured to the nearest, closest elevation point. And so that's why height for those items would be measured back here. Then the other image that I was starting to go to kind of illustrate this point further was to come here and look at it from an aerial point of view to say, okay, San Elijo is here on our left. Here's the building face that you can see on the left. And then the railing that you're seeing there is like this red dotted line. And they're showing this as a way to convey that the closest elevation is these points over here rather than using the front building facade for that. So it's a very interesting way to do that, but that's how height is working because the height is so dynamic in the way that we use it here at the city.
Could I pause right there? And so if you keep that up, the radius that you're showing, the red dashed line, you're just trying to, if we're trying to measure the height of that corner where the radius is, right? You're saying is that because it's closer to the northern edge of the building, we're going to use the elevation the grade elevation at the north side instead of the south side.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
And I want to point out to the commissioners that one of our work plans is to try to clean up the height measurement, and it's not, I don't intend this to, I think this is correct in the way we do it currently, but it's very subjective that if that guardrail is just 1 foot further south, it would be equal distance between those 2 points, and how would you choose whether to go to the north or to the south?
If I can interject there, we would measure it from both if it was even. So it would have to comply on both sides. And so the way, as Christina was stating, the way our municipal code is stated is that it's the most adjacent grade. And so that's why you find the height on the most adjacent grade for any point around the entire building. And so you have to follow, not all cities do this, but you have to follow along the entire perimeter edge.
No cities do this. Okay, but, so I don't want to derail this conversation regarding this project, but that's an instance that may come up in our future.
I like it, and it was, thank you very much, that was very helpful. It is very dynamic, and we don't always see something to this level of detail. That was why I was kind of asking the questions of, and it seemed to, with that, adjust the common area on the rooftop in terms of how that was formed in terms of the railing, right, in terms of their, okay. So it was like, okay, now why isn't it just a square? So thank you very much, I appreciate that. Thank you.
While you were on that elevation, the south elevation, could you just confirm for me that the municipal code allows a projection of 4 feet into a front yard setback instead of 2 feet? I'm looking at the front deck of
Yes.
house one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Not to be,
continue.
where's the front of the house? Is the facade?
To the left.
Okay, got it.
So south elevation, it's going to be here to the left. So what the commissioner is pointing out here is that the front yard setback is shown in this dotted line, and this balcony here is projecting out past that, and so it's allowed to do that for 4 feet.
Thank you.
Could you also confirm for me that the site walls in the front yard setback comply with our wall height? I thought I saw some diagram earlier that seemed to have a really large wall in the front yard. But are all these under is it 4 feet?
Through design review, you can go above 6 feet.
Okay. So are they specifically asking for, is one of the walls in the front yard higher than 6 feet or up to 6 feet?
I'm curious if maybe one of the walls that you're indicating, like say for example, on this house one west elevation here on the left, like is that maybe a wall that you were?
Yeah, I think
Thinking
I'm
about-
looking at Well, the one that is maybe showing directly at the front yard setback, and then we go back about 10 feet, and there's another wall with a fence on top of it. And I guess I'm curious of how tall that second wall is from the grade next to it.
Yeah, so the measurements I don't have readily available here, but we did check it for compliance, and then anything that's over what the standard allowance would be, they have complied with. So another interesting aspect here is that they've got like a solid portion, and then they've got an open portion as well, so that also helps alleviate with that, the overall height of that component.
So to be clear, in my mind, the municipal code says, I think, something like a 42-inch high wall, and the next 18 inches has to be like 50% open, something like that, for up to a 5-foot barrier in the front yard.
Yes, you're correct.
Unless we have a DRP, and then they can request something up to 6 feet tall?
Yes, although I don't think we're hitting that here.
So you can go up to 6 feet in the first 15 feet of a front yard setback, but the 4 feet can be solid, but the top 2 feet has to be 50% open. And then beyond that, then you would need a design review permit for over 6 feet, anything over 6
Okay.
feet.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I was superimposing numbers in my head. Is there an FAR for this lot, or is it only lot coverage that is, not only, but is there an FAR?
Yeah, there is an FAR because it's a multifamily zone, but they have been in compliance with what's required.
I didn't see it on the staff report's summary table. I saw the coverage. Could you tell me what the FAR for this property is?
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. Give me.
It's on page 131 of the packet on the cover sheet. And 0.6 is allowed. And with the ADU, they're doing the 0.637. So if you see it on page 30.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
You're saying with the ADU, but we can't count the ADU towards that.
The 800 square feet of
So
it.
then they are 0.59 or,
It would be 0.535.
okay, thank you. All right, Bob, did you get your answers or clarifications?
I did. It was great, and it was a great response, and I appreciate your contributions to help me. It's a lot of moving parts to it. There was one visual, though, on the east wall of the ADU that you showed in your report, and it didn't have any windows. Is that because they only are required to have windows on 3 of the 4 sides per your presentation? It was the ADU east wall.
Yeah, I see it here. Let me zoom in and look. So that one's interesting. So let me come to this slide and share it here. So that's house. I'm sorry, that's the house.
Yeah, I guess that was in your presentation,
There
so
you
that
go.
one.
Yeah, so at least 3 of the sides would need windows. This one, I believe those are windows of such, they're maybe not classic windows, but it's showing me that there's an aluminum frame, so I'm assuming that those are windows.
Okay, I
And
was
if-
sure if that was a door or a window, but I guess.
Yeah, I don't think they're functioning as doors as far as I can see. And thinking about like how this interacts with the site, this is 4 feet away from the property line. I doubt that people are coming out of those.
Doors.
Right, I don't
Right.
think they're doors, I think they're windows.
So in your opinion, is it just that was how they accomplished the windows per side? All right, we can always ask the applicant or the architect if they're here when they present, but those qualify as windows and thus qualify as meeting the standard.
Yes, and again, that standard was just to have windows on at least 3 of the sides.
Right.
So they've met that.
And if I may, Chair, I'd also like to respond that the ADUs are not the subject to design review. It's the actual single-family, detached single-family homes on the lot.
If you,
may.
yeah, if you go to the state. Yeah, yeah.
That's a good point. So those are state requirements,
correct.
not, okay, thank you for
Of course.
note to file.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your staff report. With that, we will open up to public comment. I think we have the applicant, of course. Yes. Would you please, we'll give you 10 minutes if you'd like to present your project.
Am I on? Good. I'm Tyler Van Streit. I'm with JLC Architecture. We've got Jean-Louis, the principal architect. We've got George, our landscape architect, and Mike and Lisa, the owners, are here as well. I don't have a presentation. I just want to say we're happy to bring the project before you today. I think Christina's done a great job. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, so we're happy to be here. And I would just kind of echo what she said in the report, the statement she made about how we've sought to present the project in a compliant manner with all the applicable zoning and regulations and height. Some of those points, like the height, are a bit tricky, but I think we put the work in to get there. If there are any specific points like that to clarify, I could help with that. And we're here to answer any other specific questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, now I think we have some, or were there any questions of the applicant? Okay.
Yeah, we
Public
have
comment?
3 speakers. First is Mike Seskin, followed by Michelle Crocker and Chris Crocker. So Mike, you're first.
Hello, my name is Mike Seskin. My wife and I live at the property of 1474 Summit Avenue, which is on the southeast corner of the proposed site. After reviewing the various content of the latest packet, nice to meet you, Christina. I noticed that there are 2 discrepancies which I think are concerning, and I would request that this commission reject the proposal until these discrepancies are resolved. The first one, which was, actually they're both listed in the CPP. The first one was addressed in the CPP response, which is the width of the driveway, which is in the plan at 10 feet as opposed to the required fire code of 16 feet. The second one is the actual mismatch between the definition of the project, 2 single-family homes, versus the requirement in the EMC 30.04.010, which calls for individual lots and parcels for each single-family home. That is not in the staff report, and until that is resolved, I would ask the commission to reject the report or the project.
Is that it? Thank you. We'll have our next speaker. It would be Michelle Crocker.
Can everyone see me? I'm so short here. Okay, good evening, commissioners. Thank you for giving me this 3 minutes. Number one, I do want to talk about the ADU very, very quickly. We are 1464, so we're directly behind, the house behind this new development. The pop-up that is in the ADU is for storage. That pop-up completely blocks the view of our primary suite and main living area, and also our neighbor, who can't be here today, had expressed it in writing. So I'm asking the Planning Commission to consider why a storage space in an ADU of 500 feet with windows looking at the ocean is more important than actually blocking our view. So that's my point number one. My point number two, which is really important, and that's about my family safety. About 9 months ago, we came here and we addressed our concerns, one of which Christina failed to bring up, which was the pop-up, so we brought it up now. But this is around safety, around the fire code and the 10-foot driveway. So 9 months ago, I raised my concerns, and the architect who's here said, my concerns aren't accurate, they don't matter. I have a son who's a firefighter, and he works in the fire department. And we already have Encinitas emailed us confirming approval to go ahead because this is in fire code 9 months ago. So I'm not sure what your due process here is, but this is to me quite significant and troubling. One. Next, I stand behind you and before you as a resident of Encinitas, but more importantly, as a mother. And our 2 daughters' bedrooms are directly behind this 4-foot setback. So, do I want a fire truck to come to the property? You bet. Do I want a fire truck to be stuck on San Elijo with firefighters having to schlep a hose? And by the way, I've done some research on how much extra time, and time is of the essence when you're putting out a fire. Every 30 seconds, a fire doubles in intensity and heat. And I've done some research on this, and according to FEMA, the fire website on the national FEMA, because flashovers can start in 5 minutes. And there's a standard right now which the National Fire Protection Association sets. And that means from the time a fire is called, it should be 4 minutes. That's your KPI. They're not even getting up the driveway in 4 minutes. It's steep. It's going to bend. It's going to have kinks. So the fire truck's got to get there, and they got to get up the driveway. Just doing a quick, on FEMA, 80-foot up a steep driveway with bends is an extra 3 minutes at best, 2 to 3 minutes. Well, 30 seconds is doubling fire intensity. So I'm asking you to reject this project because it is unsafe and not fair to us as residents to have to sleep with our family in danger. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, our next and final speaker is Chris Crocker.
Hi, Commissioners, staff, guests of honor. I appreciate your time. I also echo my neighbor, Mr. Seskin's comments around that there are a couple unresolved items that I don't think we have the ability to approve the project at this time. The one that actually is most concerning to me is the classification of the property. I also agree this is sort of 4 things smashed together, and it's classified as single-family residence. Before this project is actually finished and completion, it's very likely in our state that those ADUs are going to be able to be sold individually. This is really a condominium project. The single-family residents should have their own ADUs adjacent to them, and they should be distinct properties. They're not. They put them in the very, very back corner. And to me, that's concerning because that's a manipulation of the rules to be able to get the narrow driveway, to be able to get more square footage, to be able to put 10 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack. So while it's clever, and yes, it might check the boxes in its current form, it doesn't tick the boxes for me because it's a workaround. The second point I have is, Mr. Pendergrast, you commented on this as well. The rear elevation, you have to view this in the context of if you were at the property. If you were at our property, that rear elevation is a freaking wall. And it's a wall off our primary bedroom that looks like a drive-in movie theater could project its presentation onto. And if you look at the actual floor plans show that that's actually a storage area on the floor plan. So everything that the Planning Commission has to do involves trade-offs, and you have to use your best judgment for the trade-offs. It doesn't seem right to me that the trade-off of destroying the view from our primary bedroom to enable light to flow into a storage area is a fair trade-off. You could very easily accommodate light by adding solar tubes, glass panels on the roof. There's lots of ways to get light into this back ADU without cutting off the view of our property. I'm not very happy about that because I'm going to look out my window at a big old huge flat white wall and no longer see the sunset from the house. I have a problem with that. So I would ask that you not approve this until you get clarification on this, because it feels to me as though while everybody's saying this is single-family residence or improving single-family residences, I don't believe this should be classified as single-family residence. I believe this should be classified as a condominium project. If they want to put the 2 ADUs in separate parcels with each property, then you got a point there, and then it kind of looks like a duplex. But this is one APN number one actual piece of land with one actual tax bill shared by 4 actual residences. That's not 2 separate single-family homes, in my point of view. This is a really big item that you can't just push through on tonight's meeting. I think there needs to be more clarification from the city on this. The other thing about the driveway that's really concerning, and I've got 15 seconds. On the 18th of April in 2020, on our street, there was a fire. And it was down on Verde, 136 Verde. So technically it's not our street, it's where it bends down. The fire department couldn't get to the property. They had to actually use the hook and ladder and go from the top because it's a multi-story building. They couldn't access the property. We lost 2 houses there. They were down for 4 years until they were back up again. And the fire hoses were basically worthless because the fire was coming out through the roof. There is no way a hook and ladder can get over the top of this property with the minimum width there. If there's a fire in that rear unit, there isn't a way to defend it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to respond to any of the comments that they've heard? And I do have some questions for the applicant if you would come back up. You had remaining time on your clock if you want to use that to respond to any of that, or we can go straight to questions.
I think in principle, there's really just one response, which is the objections to the project, and the public is free to voice those objections, but they feel like objections to the municipal code and to the state law and to the standards that are there that we need to use as reliable guidance for the project. And so issues of setback, issues of height compliance, non-subjective measures like that, I don't want to, in a way, respond to those issues as though it's a personal response of like why it should be justified. We've worked with the owners to design their homes. Mike and Lisa and Marianne are Lisa and Marianne are sisters, and they're going to live in these single-family homes on the property. These are their homes, and they've been designed for them. And so I don't think I have specific responses for the issues beyond deferring to staff and saying we've worked with them, and the issues that are voiced about fire safety, windows, building setbacks, articulation, all of those, we've put the time in to create what we think is a really great project, and is under the limits of what could be done if it wasn't these particular homes. Yeah, so that's the general statement. Do you have any specific questions?
I have a specific question for you and regarding the pop-up storage on the rear. Is it storage? Is it attic space?
It's not.
Parapet?
It's taking advantage of the height we have available to us, and it's a clear story window that faces west so that we can bring light down into not just a storage space, but a bathroom and a bedroom that don't have wide open views in another direction. And so, no, it's not just a storage space. There is a storage area above a portion of the bathroom. We could get into the sections.
I don't need you to go into that.
But no, it's not just a storage space.
Okay, thank you. The hose pole I see is 200 feet from the street.
Correct.
And this might be more of a staff question, but I presume the fire department has reviewed this. They're not intending to bring a truck onto your property whatsoever.
That is correct.
Okay.
Christina, do you want to speak to that any further? I've had a lot of...
A head nod is enough for me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to close the public comment portion of this hearing and open it up to commissioner deliberation. Who wants to start? Who wants to start at that end of the table?
Your turn.
This is a fairly typical sized homes for that area. Very similar to others in the region. and they're certainly utilizing as most of the lot as they possibly can. It lacked some bit of landscaping. Certainly, it's pretty barren, and the ADUs definitely did not have enough windows for living. It didn't seem, just from looking at the diagrams. In general, they seem to be going by most of the guidelines and following them. And there's going to be view restrictions from probably all sides. So,
Okay. The windows, is that a big issue to you?
it wasn't a significant issue. It was notable.
I would point out the property line is going to be, 4 feet away with a fence, and I don't think that's a side of the house that you're going to see. Certainly not from the street, and there's 3 neighbors maybe in the back that will see it, but probably not even over the fence. That's going to be between them. So the windows on that east elevation didn't really concern me. Bob? Oh, I didn't mean to.
No.
If you're not ready,
that's fine.
Chris was up.
I did have a question that the public had brought up regarding the lot split. So I'll ask Anna if you could clarify the state law associated with the 2 separate parcels requests and the 2 ADUs. And those ADUs so that's the question, whether they can be on one big parcel or does it have to be parcelized with an ADU on each parcel? So,
Right, so we did call them single-family detached, but if you look at the definitions, it's actually 2-family, which says shall mean a building or buildings on a single lot containing not more than 2 dwelling units. So for stating for the record, we can change the name of it, but what it is allowed on one lot. But it just would be called something else.
so the ADU, so the state law, so if we follow our code, this is one parcel with 2 dwelling units.
Yes.
So now layer on for me the state
Yes,
component of the ADUs associated with 2 dwelling units on one lot.
right. So 2 units on one lot is considered multifamily, right? And this would be under the multifamily regulations in which they allow 2 detached ADUs. I believe actually state law is changing in the future. I don't know what that is exactly, but 2 detached ADUs from the 2 units that are on the site. And so that's what's allowed under multifamily, in addition to conversion of a non-habitable space in the actual units themselves, but that's not proposing this. But there are other provisions that are allowed here, but they are doing the 2 detached ADUs, which is allowed.
But the ADUs are attached.
Correct. So
So-
they have to be detached. The language is very specific that they have to be detached from the main units
But
on the lot.
attached, but they
They
themselves
themselves
can
can
be
be
attached.
attached. Correct.
That's state law.
Correct. That we have to also bring into our own ordinance, and we are updating our code too.
Is this SB 9 that we're talking about?
We are not talking about SB 9. This is accessory dwelling unit state law.
But the duplex are the 2 single-family houses. They're detached.
They're detached, however, because they're on one lot, our municipal code identifies that as multifamily, because it's not a single-family home on a single lot.
And we're in an R11 zone,
Correct.
and so the multifamily component,
That's a multifamily zone.
so
There's RS 11, and then there's R11, and then RS is the single-family. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, did I see your hand going up?
I was only going to speak to the windows in the ADU. My neighborhood has a lot of ADUs, and I don't think that these units have fewer windows than the ADUs I see in my neighborhood. And a lot of the reason is because of the proximity of the neighbors or street and putting windows in places where people need more privacy. So I think that this is pretty consistent with what I've seen for other ADUs in Encinitas.
Yeah. Susan?
Yeah, so my finding on it would be that it's consistent with code, both local and state. And I agree with what Commissioner Ryan just stated about privacy. And to me, I think they've made good use of a fairly small area to get the units that they desire. It's their property, and it's their design, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you. I'll have to say I like the design. I think it would be an attractive pair of houses out there. I'm not concerned about the ADUs or the amount of glass in the ADUs. I mean, I looked at the drawings pretty closely, and yeah, the height limit seems to be very dialed in. And I think, you know, having worked through projects with staff, you know, those kind of questions are, I don't see any issues with the height, the setbacks, any of that. I think they're allowed to build the two houses. We're saying it's not an SB 9, but I think there's a whole nother state law that if they chose to, they could call it SB 9 property and build these two houses and two ADUs. So I don't see an issue with that. From a fire safety standpoint, I mean, that's basically a fire code, and the fire department is, this is written in the fire code that a hose pole of up to 200 feet is allowed. And so, you know, they don't need to bring the truck onto the property. I think the narrow driveway initially was a bit of a concern, but if the fire truck's not going to be pulling up there, it means that there's less area paved on the site for a wider driveway, and so that's probably a net benefit from a stormwater and vegetation standpoint. So I would support the project tonight.
I do want to add that each unit did have noted on the floor plan, there is an area for their bins, the trash receptacle, recycle. And I know that there was a public comment letter asking about it.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify, they have it.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion on this?
I would move to approve with conditions,
What are your, as the conditions that are stated, or are you adding?
per staff conditions.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I'll call the vote. Okay, that one passes 5-0. Thank you, and congratulations. Okay, moving on, our next item is item 8B, 659, 679, Camino El Dorado Lot Line Adjustment, case number multi-006-770, 2023. And Bob, do you need the full staff report on this? Or do you want to go straight to a specific question?
You know what? I think from an experience standpoint, yes. It'll only take a minute or two.
Okay,
But
fair enough.
what the heck? Let her rip.
All right. Any before we get into any disclosures from the commission?
I did a drive-by.
Okay, I have no disclosures.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the Planning Commission, and member of the public. My name is Kaipo Kaninau, Assistant Planner, and the item before you this evening is case number multi-006-770-2023, the Camino El Dorado Lot Line Adjustment Project. The subject properties are located at 659 and 679 Camino El Dorado. I did want to briefly make a clarification for the record. The agenda report for the project incorrectly stated that the subject properties are located within the Leucadia community. However, they're actually located within the old Encinitas community. Additionally, the properties are located within the Rural Residential 2 zone and the Coastal Special Study and Hillside Inland Bluff overlay zones. The project proposes to adjust a shared lot line between two existing legal lots located at the subject properties. For reference, the image on screen shows the existing boundaries of both properties outlined in yellow. The existing lot line that divides the two properties is identified in red, which is the lot line that is proposed to be adjusted. There are two required discretionary actions for this proposed project. First is a lot line adjustment, which is required to adjust a legal lot line between two or more adjacent lots without creating a greater number of lots. Second, a coastal development permit is required to verify compliance with the local coastal program, since both properties are located within the coastal zone. The project is determined to be exempt from environmental review pursuant to Section 15305A of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, which exempts minor land alterations such as lot line adjustments. The project complies with all applicable development standards of the RR2 zone and is therefore consistent with the policies of the city's local coastal program, general plan, and municipal code. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution of approval based upon the findings in the staff report and approve the project. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, Bob?
You know, it's such a small adjustment, and I was confused between two things. One, the lot line adjustment, and then on the map, there was the property tax line that was dividing the property or bifurcating the property. Can you share with me the difference between the two, or is it really relevant at all what the property tax line adjustment is versus the lot line adjustment?
Yes, so let me use this as sort of an example. This is the plat map. I don't know how visible it is. But yeah, essentially the lot line that's being adjusted is the actual legal defining lot line between the parcel 2 in this image and parcel 1. You can kind of see in this image the line for tax assessment purposes. So the northern lot, parcel 2, is technically 2 assessor's parcel numbers, but is described as 1 legal lot per the current legal description. So that really is sort of irrelevant. It's just the property owner gets 2 tax bills for that lot. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies.
And it's such a small adjustment, it seems like they're following the existing property line, but just moving it up a little bit. Did they give you any indication of the desire, the reasoning behind the adjustment? No?
No, they did not. And we reviewed it. The property owner is within their rights to submit for such an adjustment, and they still meet all development standards.
All right. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. Okay. Is
We
there a
do have
speaker?
one speaker.
Yep.
That's Cynthia Van Bogart.
Could you clarify for me, are you the applicant or are you not the applicant?
I am a neighbor.
Okay.
I live at 543 Camino de Orquídea.
Thank you.
So I wasn't going to speak today, so I don't have anything prepared, but a couple things. It was interesting to listen to how you guys work, and I was glad that Bob saved me to be able to listen to this, because this is why I came today. There's a lot of development going on in that area. I'm concerned about the reason for this, and you asked the question why, and I guess they don't have to say why. I don't know what the zoning is, and I don't really understand. I mean, I don't know if this changes the zoning that's able. But in that area, it's a little cul-de-sac that goes down, and there's a cut-through to the grade school. And every day, there's children. Sometimes they come on their electric bikes. 3 of them were on one today. You know, it's unsafe anyway. But for that little area, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic of children. And I guess my concern is, given that we have something at the end of the street that is being a supersized development that will add to the traffic in this area, and all the schools, there's a special needs school down the street, a block. There's the high school another block away, where we get a lot of traffic and a lot of children. So I guess I'm just concerned in raising the issue of safety and for the people who live in that and use that those streets in that neighborhood. That's my concern in following this project. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. With that, I'm going to close the public comment portion and open it up to commissioner deliberation. I'll say I think this is a pretty straightforward case. I hear your concerns for safety. I think nothing that actions that we might take here tonight have any influence on whether it alters the safety condition of that site, and it doesn't do anything to alter the zoning. Both properties are the same zone, and this is almost an academic exercise. They have a purpose. I'm sure they have some reason to want to do it, but they're allowed to do that. So I would support this project. Chris?
I would just say, I also wanted to know why. I mean, they were all curious people. Yeah. And so when I had my staff briefing, that was one of the questions I asked, like, do you know why this is happening? And the staff doesn't, what I've been told, and the applicant doesn't have to tell anybody why. So I would support this, but I still have those questions.
Yeah, well, I'll wonder.
No, I echo your concerns. Thank you for coming. And both the vice chair and the chair, same kind of questions in the back of my head. And I did have a long, for Anna, an in-depth conversation regarding something so minor, and that just moving it 10 feet, does it change the density? Does it do anything if they were to leave it as is for future development? And subject to their submittal, it probably doesn't. Well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know for sure. But it was just more to the chair's position, more academic. It still has the overlay zone. It still has the slope. I asked all those kinds of questions. Does it make it, can you build more because you've moved the lot line? And no, it doesn't make you can build more because of the lot line adjustment by 10 feet. Because you would think maybe we're trying to, in the future, do something. And they'd still have to come back for any sort of future development applications. And the bluff is still there, and the 10% slope is still there. So it just, at the end of the day, I felt comfortable that it was just more of a personal and business decision on behalf of the property owners, and they had every right to do so. And anything in the future would really not be changed based on this adjustment. So it was academic, but I do ask a lot of questions. Like, it's a lot of effort to go through for a property line adjustment and not have some sort of ulterior motive, but what do I know? But thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to posit that possibly going to 1 acre may, to this applicant, be the cause that they're wanting to show that they're a full acre.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems minor, maybe,
There very
but
well could be
maybe
some,
not to them.
Yeah, there could be very well a density thing, but what they're doing is just transferring density between two properties that could ultimately build in combination the same amount. So I don't see an issue. I would make a motion to approve this project.
I'll second the motion.
All right, if I could call that vote. Okay, that passes 5-0, and that is done. Okay, next item on our agenda is future agenda items added by the planning commissioners. Are there any future agenda items to be added?
If I may, when we talked last time about the subcommittee that the two commissioners have started, and we said future agenda but didn't list a date, would February 6th, that would be our next meeting that's on here, would February 6th be acceptable to you all for that?
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Others? Okay.
Did you say that's our next meeting? No meetings in January?
Correct. The timing of when legal ads need to go out and staff reports need to be posted, it wasn't working out very well. Yeah.
Okay, Planning Commission reports?
We do have an update. I'm not sure if you have the link to display. And I didn't adjust much of but if we go to the next slide, we added some demographics. We're just looking in terms of a work plan at where are we and what do we have in our city. So this shows that 35.33% have one of 4 housing problems, and that is from Chase, the source that we use for our reports. And this is actually not 2024 because they only release this every few years. So this is their 2017 to 2021. Next slide. And so also, I thought it's relevant for us to look at our ages. And what I determined, my finding from this, was that 55 and over in age are a total of 33.4% of our population, which is quite a significant percentage. And again, this data is from 2018, so it may shift a little, but probably not significantly. Next slide. Okay, and then we get into some weeds, really weedy area here, in terms of the population, because it went down in 2020, which could have been due to the pandemic, who knows. But anyway, because of that, the census data, they use extrapolation, and so it shows that we're actually declining, not growing. But if you look at other sources, it might show the opposite. So we need to probably look at that more. You can go to the next slide. Okay, and then I think we showed this last time. This is just about the size and types of dwellings that we're allowed to build per state law. And the next one. Yes, this is again a repeat. I didn't change anything or update anything. Next slide. Let's see, public land creates affordable housing because it removes the high cost of land. So this is again a repeat. Next slide. This is a repeat explaining why we must have a certified housing element for our city to be in compliance. Next slide. Okay, this is a new slide. I looked at what kind of funding do we have, either with or without private developer funds. And so right now, the first 3 on this list are already utilized in Encinitas. The rest of these revolving loan fund might be something we could look into. This is just an initial look at what we could do. We could use the National Housing Trust Fund, perhaps, and some of these kinds of federal assistance could be layered with other funding. And it gets more complicated, of course, so it depends what you're targeting. Like, are you targeting extremely low income or market, mixed development as to what you apply for? So we probably want to pull that apart and really look at it in more detail. A community land trust is another model used for affordability. What happens is that the developer whether it would be the city or private, retains the land, and then they just either rent or sell the units, the dwellings. Finally, philanthropic organizations. And so the NLIHC has a few resources, and then there's other resources such as the innovative housing that was done up in Northern California. Next slide. And then when you look at our community and the sensibilities, we're getting so much blowback in this community about our preserving character. And one of the reasons is that we do have a high rate of home ownership. It's about 65% currently, which provides less transiency, and people know each other. Also in smaller clusters, I studied that smaller clusters allow us to know our neighbors. And a best practice is to have 25 or fewer unit communities. So these clustered developments, if to meet up to achieve our RHNA, you would want to have something like between 63 and 208 clusters at the most. And then if we looked at our NCTD transit strip, we could probably fit smaller units on it more easily, such as even a single room occupancy of 150 square feet, or that's also the size of an ADU. And then micro homes or mini homes. And so you could, next slide. You could see an example solution, for example, of if we have 130,000 square feet of NCTD, that you could yield a certain number of units. And I think, what did I total here? Something like 380. Yeah, 380 units or something in one level, or more if you go to more than one level. Next slide. And so this is a repeat about the Affordable Housing Task Force work of the task force. Next slide. Keep going, sorry. Let's still keep going. And then keep going, yeah. Okay, so the only thing I added on this slide, I think, was about the, I don't think I changed it, sorry. So I think that's it. I think that is all of our update. Just looking at more information to add to the depth of knowledge of our community. And what will we do with that knowledge? Well, we'll discuss it in February.
Great. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you and Bob putting the time into to put that together.
Yeah, Susan's done an amazing job to lead and collect all this information. You know, you look at cities like Carlsbad who are doing 100% affordable projects, and the intent here is to provide guidance to City Council, like, look, maybe next time the housing element comes around, if you look at the projects a little bit differently, then maybe, just maybe, we won't need 15 sites for our housing element. Maybe we'll need 5, and maybe we won't need to consider 475 units to get 90 units affordable, and maybe we can build a different type of community and maybe spread the density out across the city in smaller clusters. And financing structures can be looked at by City Council clearly, but other cities are considering ways to reach their RENA allocations without building 400 and large complexes with the accelerated, ancillary traffic conditions to go with them. So really what we're trying to do is provide a look at alternatives, strategies that maybe the council can look at as next time the housing element comes around.
not getting into deliberation on an agenda item that there wasn't, but
We can't really get into discussion,
But I-
but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to add one thing, which was that the NCTD site, there are 11 of them already being developed near, so.
Okay. I did just want to contribute, though, that the idea of spreading smaller clusters spread out greater, I would say, sounds promising to me. And to your point, Bob, maybe it means that more sites are zoned that way, right?
Well,
Instead of concentrating on a few.
That's a topic for future.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's
discussion.
talk about this in a future
Yeah,
meeting. that's
this is
agendized.
just reporting sort of data gathering.
This will be
what
February
we
6th.
gathered. But
Okay.
we can discuss in February.
Yes. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Bob.
Only my second report, so I'm not quite sure what we're allowed to talk about and discuss and not.
At the next meeting, it will be on the agenda, so you can
go.
discuss ad nauseum.
Don't encourage that. Okay.
Well, Bob and I worked on it together, and so his comments weren't really discussion. He's part of the report.
I see. Thank you. I think I'm the one that took it over, sorry. Okay, secretary reports?
Yes. We had the Piraeus Housing Element Site project that was approved and then went on to have a lawsuit, and there was a settlement agreement where they came back with a revised project. And as part of that settlement agreement, they went to city council, and the revisions were approved with 15 less units and proportionally one less affordable unit. And they had removed one building, cut another one in half, flipped another one over to another side, and did some shifts. So that was approved by city council last night. And then subsequently to that, the easement that of the city landowning was also approved by the easement rights were concluded.
So the vacated street persisted in the approval?
So there actually was no street to vacate. It was city-owned land. And so it then was a grant of easement. So the city still owns the property. And then, so then the other item is that the Bella Vista project that you all approved, that appeal will be heard on December 11th, and that report should be posted this evening on the website. And then I did notice that on Coastal Commission's website that 3 of our items are on their December 11th agenda, in which were appealed. It looks like they were appealed by the public. And 2 of them, one of them being the Bevand 312 Neptune Bluff project, which they identified to have substantial issue. That's the language Coastal Commission uses. So a substantial issue for that one, as well as the Sayer Family Trust residence, which that one, I apologize, the address is escaping me, but I will tell you, 246 5th Street. And then that one, they also found substantial issue. And then the third one was the La Costa 48 appeal, and they found no substantial issue on that one. So I can report back once those meetings occur.
Okay, thank you, Anna.
I do have one announcement. On Thursday, you will be receiving an email with this information. If you are invited to a presentation that our firm is providing to all of our clients, analyzing all of the new housing laws that will become effective January of 2025. So that meeting will be, I shouldn't say meeting, training. The training will be occurring this upcoming Thursday from noon to 1, so you can grab your lunch and listen to me yap at you for an hour. It'll be very fun. So I'll be sending the Zoom login information if you're interested. The target audience for this will be planning staff, so it may be a bit in the weeds for you, but it's only an hour and we're covering numerous bills, so it's not going to be too in the weeds.
Where is it located?
So it'll be a Zoom link,
Oh,
and
Zoom.
it'll be via Zoom. And so if you want to attend, you'll have the option to attend, and it be just straight up, here's the information.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Bob?
I read in somewhere, I think it was a Union Tribune article, there's a new, I think you'll cover, like you mentioned, the laws, AB, I wrote down 2787, but I don't think that's it. It's the law to extend, allowing developers an 18-month extension for any projects that was submitted prior to January of 2023. I think the Clark Street falls under that. Are there other projects that we have reviewed that are going to be granted extensions under these new laws, or is that something for another time?
I haven't looked at all the dates. I would imagine that a large amount of them would fall under it, but I haven't, because they're all, before January.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how many and which ones would fall under it. So once the expiration date comes up and they request it, at that time we'll know.
Okay. Next question I had was, in our landscape ordinance, it talks about the size of a tree. Now, I know this is really into the weeds, but clearly at some point in time, the size of the box was approved by us at some point, and then, of course, City Council. On some of these projects, specifically the sanctuary in Levenheim, some of the trees were small in comparison to the size of the property. In other places, you can't put a big tree. I think on the 87 units on El Camino Real, we went back and forth on tree size, and a tree just doesn't fit. Where do we, as an organization or commission, address things like sizes of tree to go into the code? Is that a work plan item? Because we're talking about trees that are taking 15 years or 20 years to grow back because they're being removed. So where are things like that? Where do we address things like that?
You are correct in that it would be a work plan item. I know there's already one that's called zoning amendments, and there's a list of subjects that this commission wishes to address. And so perhaps when the work plan comes before you again, we can add it to that list, or if you want to put it under a different priority.
I think I'd like to see that on our future agenda.
And there was another one that I read recently. It was also in the newspaper, but I bring it up because it was in the city of San Diego. And there was a dispute between a neighbor, two neighbors, and one neighbor, building A, was building an ADU up against the lot line. And to finish the ADU, the developer of the ADU needed to trespass on neighbor B to finish the wall. And neighbor B is like, no, you're not coming onto my property to finish your wall. And so thus, the ADU for the last 9 months hasn't had a C of O. So that was something, would we in the city of Encinitas, I know there was on today's, the one in Cardiff on San Alejo had 4 feet setbacks, which would allow someone to go in there and finish the wall and complete their certificate of occupancy. Is there something in our code that could have a similar situation? Only because it's been brought to my attention by reading the newspaper in Pacific Beach, and now the person said no trespassing, so you can't come and finish the wall, so thus you can't build. So do our codes have a conflict like that? And if so, how could we address it? Would that also be a work plan item? I don't know.
That feels like a constructability issue, not a code issue, meaning code
But
says.
I think it is covered under our nonconformity. We allow nonconformity to persist, and I don't think that our ADUs would ever be zero lot line, would they?
They could be. I mean, there are instances you can use a zero lot line, but you got to make sure you can you have to be able to build it.
Yeah, I think the city of San Diego closed the loophole, but people who had applied under, before they closed the loophole, has this situation. So there's the house, it's full, but they can't finish it because I have to come onto the neighbor's property to
So,
finish it.
Bob,
So
maybe
what do we do with that?
The two of us, we can chat about this afterwards. I'm happy
I just
to
want to
talk
make
about
sure
it.
that, I mean, if that's a work plan item, I'll do some research, I'll go find the City of San Diego code. I just don't know where and when to do that.
Well, I will say that in the city of Encinitas, if you needed to go on somebody else's property, you need permission, so that would stand here. And then you are correct, 4 feet is the required setback for ADUs. And then it's also correct that there are some, legal non-conforming structures that may be at 0 feet that they're allowed to convert under the state law. And so if they needed to get property owner permission and they couldn't, yes, they'd have to think of an alternative for their design at that time, or be creative in getting it done.
I think ADUs are also in our work plan. Discussion about them.
Okay, before we start solving world peace, which wouldn't be a bad thing, I'm going to adjourn the meeting until the next regularly, we're canceling the December 19th meeting, and February 6th will be the next regular meeting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Work hard to provide these services and amenities